In this video, I'm going to share my initial impressions of the Behringer K-2 MKii. I've had the synth for about 3 weeks now and I've started to get used to what it can and cannot do. This video is not a full-on review as it's not what I'm doing here. Instead, it's what I feel about the synth in the context of the £172 I've spent on it. And as ever, with Behringer equipment, the cost is really an important factor that should be considered. Anyone making a judgment which does not include the context of the cost is not really being balanced. Sure, at this point there are going to be some compromises and this may make the synth not for you. However, to totally put the device down without using it as context doesn't seem to be a fair reflection. To paraphrase a comment I saw on Facebook, when it costs you around £100 to fill up your car with fuel, £172 on the synth, which will last for years, doesn't seem too bad a deal. Of course, everything's relative and not everyone can easily afford the disposable cash to invest these kinds of sums. But most of the folk I read talking down Behringer gear often refer to other manufacturers who sell their products at higher price points, and again, I'm not entirely sure that that's a fair comparison. With all that in mind, I think it's a good idea to tackle one of the main aspects where Behringer gear often gets a bit of a bad rep, and that's the build quality. The first thing you notice when you take the K2 MKii out of the box is that it follows the usual 3U Eurorack convention, which most of the Behringer synths these days follow. This tried and tested format means the synth is kind of medium size, and at 80 HP it probably won't go into too many modular racks, but it fits on a desk quite nicely. The case is metal with a metal faceplate, wooden side cheeks and plastic knobs. For me, all is good apart from the knobs. They feel like an area where Behringer have cut a corner to hit a particular price point, and as a result the synth does not feel quite as tweakable as say the Pro 800 or the Edge. Both of these have superior knobs and the Edge at least is similarly priced to the K2 MKii. I would have liked the knobs to have had a slightly better feel to them and would have happily played a little bit more to have the one element you touch on the synth to feel in keeping with the rest of the build quality. The sound of the K2 MKii is different to some of the other synths such as the Model D and the MS1 Mark II, but there is some overlap with the Novation Base Station 2. That is, it's dual oscillator and tends towards the heavier side of analog synths, so that is especially true when you inject some frequency modulation or FM. The FM aspects of the K2 MKii is a welcome addition as it offers a wide array of tones and tonal variations which can be subtly applied or can add a bit of wildness to your sound. This is a lot of fun to play with. PWM in or pulse width modulation doesn't really add that much flavour to the sound, and whilst it's nice to have, it doesn't affect the sound as much as FM does, and I suspect it's something I'll probably use sparingly. There appears to be one main concern in regards to the sound of the K2 MKii, which is the resonance on Rev 1 filter setting. I've not yet been able to replicate this issue, but others have commented the resonance fade after about an hour or so of playing. The extent of this and how much it fades appears to vary by synth, and whilst I'll do some further digging to find out what conditions I need to do to impact the Rev 1 resonance and see if I can get it to fade. As a workaround, the Rev 2 filter doesn't have this issue, so depending on the scenario, and especially if you're intending to play live with the K2 MKii, then you may just want to stick to that. One of the main attractions of the K2 MKii for me is the patch bay on the right hand side of the synth. That's because it now responds to 1 volt per octave control voltage, which is the Eurorack standard. So far I've only dabbled with this a little bit, but I find it opens up a whole world of modulation which otherwise wouldn't be open to me. I'm keen to explore this further, but I have found the patch bay slightly confusing to read as it's laid out as a flow diagram, and it's not immediately obvious what's an input and what's an output. This is going to take a little while to learn, spending a bit of time with the manual, and I'll want to find the control points which are going to make the most difference to the kind of sounds that I want. That said, it was relatively easy to find the filter frequency input control points and send LFO control voltage to them, which is something well worth doing, and it gives you an idea of what the synth is capable of. So in conclusion, the Behringer K2 Mark II is definitely a bargain. It's sturdy with some minor flaws and has a lot of sound for the money. It neither sounds like my Model D or the MS1 Mark II, but has a little bit more of an edge and a bite to it. So you may find there's an overlap with some of the other analog synths you own. So again, that's something to be aware of. The filter issue and the feel of the knobs appear to be the only real issue that I've uncovered in the last few weeks. And with second-hand price of MS20Ms around £400 in 2024, there is an interesting decision to be had. Do you save a few pounds and get a similar MS20 sounding synth, or spend 2.5 times that to get something made by Korg, which obviously will be more closely following the MS20 design? I've opted to go down the Behringer route, as I could get this and the MS1 Mark II for around the same kind of money. And because for me, having these two synths offers more combined flexibility and choice than just having an MS20M does on its own. What do you think? Is the K2 Mark II on your shopping list? Are you put off by the potential issue with the filter and the plasticky knobs? Or is this just not for you? I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts on the synth. And also, if you're interested in other Behringer related gear, then watch this video over here.